Yo, you hear the music right now. It's on right now. What else is on? You
What's
already know
up?
what it is. The Sports Bag Bros Podcast, episode 8, is now before you. I'm Trav, he's biased, and we're going to get into the conversation of sports. Today is Monday. As you may know, we'll try to have this show for you 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. So we'll try to give you your sports fix as we see necessary. Right now, you're probably checking us out on YouTube. If so, subscribe to the channel. More importantly, like the channel. That way it helps the algorithm help us, and we can spread this message and conversation to many of those sports fans who may need it. In addition to that, share, comment, leave us some show ideas. We would like to get on top of that as well, not just the daily sports. Just as important as that as well, we are on Spotify, so check us out there.
Yeah, if you don't want to see us, you can listen.
You can listen, exactly. You can listen to us on the long trip, the long workout, the short workout. Just listen more than once. Either way you look at it, we're on Facebook as well, so join us inside our Facebook and Twitter. Twitter's blowing up as Bias has been taking command of the Twitter sphere of late, and things have been getting a little bigger. So without further ado, we have a lot to get into. It's time. The Sports Bag Bros podcast is on the set. SBBP for those who want to keep it short. There are a lot of things to talk about today. Of course, today being the NBA Finals, which may be the final, with the Denver Nuggets at home again, trying to close it out against the Miami Heat as a 9-point favorite. In addition to the later topics that we'll have on here, we'll talk about a little bit more basketball, but this past week reviewing some boxing and other sports that have been going on as well. Some football as well, so just stay tuned. Bias is here, as I've already spoken. Good day, Bias. We are on a new episode number 8.
What's up, YouTube? What's up, Spotify? You know, we're getting ready for this game 5. I said on Thursday, if the game was on Sunday, we may be doing this show. The finals might already be over. And I believe that. If the game was last night, Nuggets would have won. They're probably going to win by double digits tonight. They're obviously the better team. You know, they're playing like the better team. And it's over. There's more I can say, but that's pretty much the bottom line. I think it's over tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you, and Vegas agrees with you, but Vegas has been wrong, and we have been wrong too throughout the entire this series and previous playoff games. But this time around, no, I think those 10 days off that we talked about during the beginning of the series doesn't matter anymore. They have their sea legs, and they've been showing it. They've been shown they're the better team, but just as important, they've been shown that they're just as gritty as this Miami Heat team. And with all things equal, we're seeing the results. Miami hangs in there 23-23, 25-23, but then Denver just starts pulling away, and we get the end result, which is another Miami loss, whether in Denver or even now in Miami. Now they're back in Denver. The home crowd is churning and dying for a closeout at home in front of the home fans.
Right. You know, I mentioned last week, Murray showed he's a dog. Jokic is unflappable. It doesn't matter what you throw at him. You could triple team him, quadruple team him. He's going to find an open man. If you don't, he's going to make an easy bucket. It doesn't matter. Jokic is, like I said, he's unflappable. So the Nuggets have a huge advantage. And unless we get playoff Jimmy going crazy tonight, I don't see the Heat having any chance.
And even if he goes crazy, being on the road and knowing what Jokic can do and knowing what Jamal Murray can do, and even little guys, coming off the bench, doing what they do, Christian Brown coming, he didn't do well in the game after his 15 points, but we know that he's capable of adding something that you're probably not expecting to add to the equation, making things a little bit more difficult. Aaron Gordon, also another one of those players that you probably didn't expect much from in this series, but he's showing also that he can play when the lights are on. And how about Tyler Hero possibly showing up? He's going to get in this game. I think, all hands on deck. It's not a problem having him in there. Before I was like, what difference does it make? Well, with all hands on deck, you don't have a game tomorrow or next week if you don't win today. Why not?
Right, put him out there, see what you can get out of them. They need a spark. They pretty much got dominated on their home court. Now they're going to Denver. They need some type of spark. They're not getting it from Strus, from Robinson, from Vincent. So maybe Hero can give them something. But when it all comes down to the end, the Nuggets have too much firepower for them.
Yeah, you mentioned Strus. He was the one who started it all when they were on the road and got their road win. When he started off with all the 3-pointers and set the pace, and they would end up stealing the game in Denver. Those guys have been quiet, and that's why throughout the course of a season, you can kind of see the identity of a team. You know who the stars are. You know they're going to show up most times, and the time they don't, some of the backups have to really shine, but they can't do it long term. And this is one of those short terms in which they can't do it long term, which is a playoff game.
That backcourt, they only outscored us by 2 points, and we didn't play.
Yeah, I mean, it's I wonder how that happens.
Hard to win like that, man.
It is. I mean, I wonder how that happens. I mean, I know you can get out of rhythm, but as a professional, though, on this level, and these are now arguably the two best teams in the NBA that gotten this far. I mean, how do you kind of break your rhythm to where you can at least get some of that back? They're not getting any of that back from what they did in Denver the first time around. They went home. You thought home cooking and familiarity would be a problem or be a benefit. It's been nothing but nothing. And Denver's been just churning away. I mean, they are the better team, but they're matching them with intensity as well. And I think that's where the disconnect comes, and that's where the results are starting to be all of the same.
Yeah, I think maybe the first 2 games were kind of like a boxing match, feeling out rounds. Yeah. And now the Nuggets have it figured out. And what it really reminds me of is the Homer Simpson meme, where he starts out in front of the bush and then he slowly disappears. That's what it reminds me of.
And that's true. I remember that. Homer does it with jerseys too. He'll leave it one jersey, come back out with another jersey when the team isn't doing that well. But the Tyler Hero effect, we can go back to that just for a second, just to kind of accentuate that, what he may add to the table, because he's used to being a 6th man. He's not a 6th man anymore, but he's been in that capacity before. Won 6th man of the year. He can give them that spark, but they need a spark that can continue, not just a spark that kind of lights and goes out. It has to be consistent. And on the road in Denver, we'll go back to the altitude as well. They've conquered it before, but the pressure wasn't on.
Right. So what I would look for is the Heat to come out, playing with a sense of urgency, playing for their playoff lives.
Yes.
And they may throw a huge haymaker the first quarter. But it's up to Denver to weather the storm, and eventually the cream will come to the top. How much can Hero even play? Is he going to play more than 15 minutes? How many times can he run up and down the court before he gets winded? Or what if he gets whacked on the hand?
That's another thing.
I'm pretty sure, let's say he drops a couple threes, hey, whoever's guarding him, if he puts the ball on the floor, they're going to be reaching.
Yeah, of course.
I accidentally, purposely hit his hand.
Yeah, you know how it's going to be. Even without hand checking, he's going to feel some pain if there's pain to be felt. I think he's managing the pain right now. I think he probably had taken some aspirin before this game so he could be more effective and don't have to worry about the pain as much. But as you mentioned, how long is he going to be out there? If he's out there for 15 minutes, is it an efficient and effective 15 minutes? Is he out there for 20 minutes? He hasn't played since April 16th. We're talking nearly 2 months since he's been on an active floor of substance in basketball. And not only substance, but now you're in the game that matters most for your entire season. Do you overexert yourself, try to do more, or what more can he bring to the table? We know about his 3-pointers. He's averaging over 20 points a game. Free throw wise, which is underrated, he leads the league with over 93% from free throws. I mean, if it comes down to a game of attrition and it's close, that may be a benefit in Miami's favor. But that doesn't all seem likely, man. I think that the team Denver's chomping at the bit. The fans are there. They're riled up. They're chomping at the bit to get the franchise's first NBA championship in history. Everything's on the line. And Jokic, like you said, unflappable. I mean, his eyes don't get wide. He doesn't panic. He doesn't go fast. He just plays and accumulates points where it matters most. And they win because of him. And then when you have Murray added to the equation and Gordon added to the equation and other players added to the equation, it's just a mess waiting to happen for the Miami Heat, in my opinion.
You got Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown,
bro.
Bruce Brown coming off the bench, dropping 20+, in the big shot in the fourth quarter. I mean, Nuggets, they're just better. They're more talented. And their role players have been performing at a much better level than the Heat, obviously.
Yeah,
And I don't see how that's going to change unless, like I said, playoff Jimmy shows up and he goes crazy and he just tells the guys, jump on my back, follow my lead. And, sometimes other players can get inspired. If Jimmy's going crazy, that's going to make them play harder, on defense. It's going to make them go for loose balls, go for rebounds, and, try and contribute any way they can to help him out. So we'll see. I think Jimmy's been trying to get his teammates involved, but obviously it hasn't been working. So now Jimmy's got to do what superstars are supposed to do, lead the way.
Yeah, and I hope that his emotion in this game doesn't kind of backfire to where he wants them to play so much better around him if he's doing everything to where it kind of messes up team chemistry because he's upset with them, and in return, they're going to get upset with him even though they have no right, and it can kind of just dampen what they're trying to get done. Hopefully Miami gets it done. I don't think it's likely, but hey, why would you listen to us? I mean, seriously, when it comes down to picking these teams, man, we've been right sometime, but if anything, we've been 500. So we kind of got a coin flip chance.
And we just got game 1 and game 2 flipped. After that, besides that, we've been on it.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned the other night, if game 2 happens game 1 and game 1 happens game 2, nobody's thinking the Heat even have a shot. I don't believe they have a shot because that means the Nuggets would have won 3 in a row, and they would have won all 3 handily.
Yeah.
And I said, I believe they have them figured out.
Yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to do anyhow. And now they have a chance in front of the home crowd to close it out. Home court advantage, the better players, just as intense as the road team. I mean, all things are looking bad for Miami. There's hope for Miami team fans and teammates. But the reality says that this is going to be Denver's night. This is going to be a history-making night. And the real MVP of the regular season will get the MVP of the NBA Finals, and that will be Nikola Jokic, who deserves it. Joker deserves the MVP of the NBA, but he's also getting the MVP of the Finals, which matters more than anything else.
Yeah, like we talked about the other day, he'll gladly trade
easily
the season MVP for the Finals MVP.
Absolutely.
But the odd thing is, after last year's Finals, people were asking, is Steph Curry the best player in the league? When the Bucks won it, people were asking, is Giannis the best player in the league? This year, they're obviously going to ask, is Jokic the best player in the league? I think it just seems who's the best player that wins the championship.
Probably so, but we've seen Jokic win 2 previous MVPs of the entire league and arguably should have gotten a third one. So I think it accentuates more of him being the MVP of the league and best player of the league for more than one season. He just happens to be in the playoff with a chance at a championship this time around, and he's likely going to be the MVP once this game is over because I think game 5 is it. It's kaput. And that leads us to this point. With all those things getting killed, Jokic is killing the Heat. Well, Conor McGregor is killing the Heat's mascot, so they got double whammies against them. What's going on with the hospitalizations these days?
I don't know, man. When I saw that, I didn't know that it was a planned promotion. But he didn't hold back. The mascot get-up didn't offer no protection, obviously. He dropped him with the first left, and then he hit him when he was down. You talk about protect yourself at all times. The man was down. He didn't know he had to protect himself.
He didn't know he had to protect himself from jump. When he got into the mix, he didn't realize this thing was for real. Only Conor got the script. He didn't get the memo, the mascot. Now there may be a lawsuit from this. I'm expecting because, come on, man, this was off script. People got hurt unless there's some type of, I don't know, they take care of him out of the court system. But it was just something that needed to be talked about. And I'm sticking with basketball and the NBA as we're moving this show along. Welcome to the Sports Bag Bros podcast, episode number 8. I'm Trav. He's biased. We're bringing the conversation of sports to you. If you're watching us on YouTube, continue to do that, but also subscribe to the channel. Just as importantly, make sure you hit the like button because that helps the algorithm and helps get this sports conversation out to many others who would like to have the conversation as well. We have a Facebook page, so make sure you go there. Sports Bag Bros podcast. That's the name of it. Like with everything else, that includes Twitter, that includes Instagram, all of those social media platforms. You can catch us in addition to listening to us on Spotify. So click there if you don't want to watch. Check us out on a long trip, a long workout, a long day. How about that? But anyway, back to the business at hand. Well, Houston, it brings us to Houston Rockets. There was a rumor or a story about James Harden wanting to go back to Houston, coming from Philadelphia. He was at Houston before, but if the Houston Rockets don't secure James Harden for a second time, they're thinking about Kyrie Irving, so he doesn't have to move too far out of the state of Texas. He's going from one city to the other, from Dallas to Houston. What are your thoughts on that?
Seems like the Rockets are just desperate to get a name on their roster because Harden's best days are behind him. Kyrie has so many question marks. What are they going to bring? You know, those players, they need a lot of talent around them as well, you know, to do well in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I just question what Houston's doing, what their motives are.
To even get to the playoff, because Houston is not even close. I think they're further ahead than Detroit because those were the two teams with the younger players on it that were supposed to have been making steps, you know, outside of the real younger teams that are already established, like the Minnesota Timberwolves or even the Memphis Grizzlies. But what does Kyrie really bring to a young team? Do you really want him there? I mean, is he a locker room presence or is he a cancer? Everywhere he's been, he hasn't been quite right with anyone, you know, especially after winning the championship.
Right. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's a cancer, but I wouldn't say he's a positive influence on young players either.
No.
You know, you would think with all that talent in Boston, they would have accomplished much more than they did, but they obviously didn't. And then he got together with KD and Harden, and that didn't work. And then he went to Dallas with Luka, you know, one of the brightest young superstars in the game, and they barely improved, if at all. So I don't see how he helps Houston.
I was pretty skeptical about that move to Dallas anyway. I mean, there's only one basketball, two different kind of play. Well, kind of the same play, just one much more athletic than the other. Both have basketball IQs. But the move, it wasn't more of a Mark Cuban thing than it was seeing what really could happen. It wasn't just a crapshoot to see, you know, because he was going into the last year of a contract. They know they didn't have to renew him. They would like to, but I think they wanted to wait and see how it worked with he and Luka before they decide to make that decision, because Mark Cuban doesn't sound so anxious about it as he sounded when he made the move.
Well, if Mark Cuban's acting as the GM, that's a problem right there.
His ego, you already know how he gets down. You know, he's probably doesn't act like the GM, but he says enough things publicly to where the GM probably reacts because of it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the owner says things and insinuates things. It may be one of those things where the GM just goes along to get along.
Could be, but, you know, obviously Mark Cuban, he's one of the better owners. Oh, if he bought the White Sox, I would be ecstatic. I want him to get into baseball and buy my White Sox team. But at the same time, if he did, I wouldn't want him acting as the GM.
Well, you know,
even influencing the GM.
Basketball is his sport, so I think he thinks he feels at home with it. You know, it's kind of like Jerry Jones, who thinks that he's a real GM, and they haven't won a doggone thing since Jimmy Johnson left. You know, so I think that's another problem in its own. But you know, the NBA coming to the end of the season, you know, free agency starts next month. You know, everything's going to kind of change after this championship game. You have the draft coming up, so you'll know what the new players are coming into your organization. Fred VanVleet of the Raptors decided to decline his player option with the Raptors and move on, become an unrestricted free agent. Benefit? Who's going to be the benefit for him? And if he is a benefit for someone, is he going to be that part that puts them over the top, whichever team it goes to?
If I'm VanVleet, I try to go to the Lakers. Everybody's talking CP3 to the Lakers. CP3's on his last leg. We talked about it last week.
Oh, yeah.
You know, how much of an impact can he have over an 82-game season? Will he be healthy come playoff time? So I'm saying, forget, if I'm the Lakers GM, I don't want CP3. VanVleet's a free agent. Let me see what I can do to see if I can get him to Tinseltown.
Yeah, you know, that would be a good deal. But all the Lakers really looking at him anymore. I mean, that deal back in the day when David Stern was there, Kobe was there, that made a whole lot of sense. That never happened. Now you have an older CP3 who's probably best as a backup, six man, maybe a little, not even a six man, because he's not fat. You know, he doesn't have the explosiveness and he doesn't bring that to the game anymore. I mean,
people are saying, you know, he and LeBron are tight, which is true, but does that mean he's a great fit to win a championship? And they're saying he and AD in the pick and roll would work to perfection until one of them gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. One of them gets hurt and it throws everything out of whack, and then you get the playing game again because you know that Anthony Davis is going to get hurt. That's just the way it goes with his career. He's going to dominate while he's healthy, but then he's going to be injured when he's injured, and he's injured quite a bit. I'm always thinking that he's going to get over the hump of finally staying injured most of the time, have a reasonable career season where he's not as injured all the time, but it never works out. But when he's out there, easily one of the top 3 players in the entire league.
Definitely. I mean, he's a mega talent. The only thing missing from his game recently has been 3-point shooting, but he actually hit a few threes during the playoffs. He just wasn't taking them consistently.
You know what?
Now, defense, AD's a monster.
Exactly. That's when he came out of Kentucky as a defensive monster, kind of like Patrick Ewing as a defensive monster coming out of Kentucky. It's just that his offensive game is refined as well, and he has the heart to go after rebounds. It's just that the injuries once again. But, you just mentioned about how, AD, being a defensive guy and not hitting 3-pointers. That's odd because back in the day, we weren't looking for guys like him to hit 3-pointers. Now that becomes just in vogue in the way the NBA is now, where you have guys like Kristaps Porzingis at 7'3", shooting threes and making them. And now you look at Jokic shooting threes and making them. All these bigger guys are now shooting threes and making them. In fact, Jokic at about 7'5", 6'11", 7 feet. He looks better shooting a 3 and has probably more success than somebody like Julius Randle, who looks like he should not be shooting threes, and it shows. And he still goes after it. They let him do it. And it sounds like
but I'm saying AD used to shoot more threes. In the bubble, he had that game winner where he went down saying Kobe. They wouldn't call that for him if they didn't think he could shoot threes. He used to shoot more threes.
But, I think that goes back also to his point guard background. Remember, he grew, I believe, like 6 or 7 inches, like in a spurt. So he went from being a traditional guard to just getting himself to a power forward center spot to where he's still not used to it. I hear some people say he's still not used to playing with his back to the hoop because he's a natural point guard. And it makes sense. But, guys these days, though, his size and bigger, shooting threes with impunity. And they have the right to because Steph Curry's changed it all. So everybody's getting in on it. So it just sees how that's going down. So that Vance Fleet story I thought needed to be out there just as well as this story now. I think you mentioned it last week. Dame out there in Portland. He got to set him free. He set himself up by saying that he's willing to stay there pretty much for a lifetime until they build a championship around him. That's not going to happen. I think there might have been a little bit of inspiration from the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis saying pretty much the same thing and staying the course and getting a championship. That's not happening in Portland. That hasn't happened in decades in Portland.
I mean, but Milwaukee, they have Chris Middleton and they added Drew Holiday and Bobby Portis, stepped up his game. They don't have those type of players in Portland.
But those players had to come, knowing that Giannis is there. They had to come.
Who wants to go to the Pacific Northwest?
That's the problem. I'm like, why wouldn't they want to come out there? They had a hell of a team before, back when Clyde was there, Jerome Kersey Porter. They had guys out there, Cliff Robinson. They were out there. Those guys, they built that team. And it was a different NBA, of course. But I don't know why people don't want – what's wrong sports-wise with the Northwest, the great Northwest? I mean, why wouldn't a player want to just come there? You're giving them all the money because sometimes you get these max contracts. You're getting paid to go there. Why are they not going to somewhere like Portland?
Maybe John needs to go there so he can stay out of trouble.
Man, again, Ja brings trouble with him. You know what I mean? And speaking of Ja, it's crazy how he's gotten in trouble over the past season. And now, looks like it's going to be even worse once these playoffs over, once these championship games are over. It looks like that.
We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to find out tomorrow because this game is over tonight. And we'll stamp that one. A 9-point favorite by Vegas kind of lets you know that even if it was not as a big a blowout, it's still going to be a win nonetheless, even if it's 1 point. And Zion Williamson and Ja Morant played AAU ball together. How ironic that these guys just find themselves in the crosshairs of NBA stories, whether salacious like Zion Williamson or like Ja just being malicious. Salacious and malicious. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but what does it say about you when Kwame Brown is roasting you?
Kwame's been roasting everybody.
he's a better YouTuber than he was basketball player. I mean, I watched this video roasting, absolutely roasting Zion Williamson. And I was laughing my ass off. It was funny. But like I said, he's a better YouTuber than he was basketball player. He's roasting these basketball players now.
Yeah, he's the GOAT of YouTubers, of former NBAs who are now YouTubers. He's the GOAT there. There may be a Mount Rushmore for him on that, the way he's been roasting guys from Stephen A. Smith to Steven Jackson. Matt Barnes. He's been going after anyone who came after him. It's not like he does this thing when he doesn't necessarily does anything unless he gets provoked. And all of these years of Stephen A., I can see why he came off on him. That I can see why the Steven Jackson thing and all these other people who've been going in on him for years.
What Zion do to him?
Well, now Zion's just too juicy a story to let go. And if you cover the NBA and you have a podcast, how can you leave this guy alone, knowing what he's doing? And it's ridiculous. I feel bad for him because by all accounts, Zion was supposed to have been such a good dude in high school and now coming out of Duke and being in the NBA. And Stephen A., as he said, he can't get healthy. We need your legs, but we see where those legs are going now, just like in boxing. Women weaken legs, and we're watching it now.
Yeah, if you're listening or if you're watching, do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and look up Kwame Brown talking about Zion. It's hilarious. He even made up a song for Zion.
I never thought, when I first listened to Kwame Brown, I never thought that he was that kind of guy. I mean, I didn't know him from one way or another outside of basketball. But in terms of the articulation, come on now, let's call a spade a spade. I wasn't expecting him to be as articulate as he was and being able to tie loose ends together and say things about players and even events and make sense. And he's doing it every time, and he throws that humor into it, and it seems like a natural humor, not something he's pressing on. And it is funny. So this guy making songs on the fly, he's now an official YouTuber who has made it big outside of the NBA. And he kept his money from, according to him, his money's done well for him. He got himself attracted, all that stuff. We listen to his show, you understand that thing.
Right.
And that'll be our take on the NBA as it stands right now, as we sit here right before Game 5 of the NBA Finals between the Denver Nuggets and Denver taking on the Miami Heat, who are trying to have all hands on board, trying to save their season and get back to Miami for a Game 6. Not very likely, not very probable, but there's still a way to get there, and that's only winning. That's why Tyler Hero's coming in tonight. Might not be a lot, might not be enough. According to Bias and I, it won't be enough. So we're closing the door on the NBA talk because this past weekend, as we start on a Monday, it's review time. A lot of things have happened over the weekend in sports in general, boxing in particular. Teal Lopez goes into the fight as an underdog. You and I thought he was going to just lose the fight because he looked bad in his previous.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
I wasn't. Exactly. I thought, we've watched Josh fight, and we knew that he was going to, that he could fight. Even though he had that Catterall win was a sketchy win, but that's boxing. He still won. He was undefeated going in here. They talked about his previous opponents, 133-0 record. It just kept building up to another whitewash. Tio's going through a lot outside of the ring, the divorce, and after the fight he mentioned about getting custody of his son. That's his next fight. I got to go to court and fight for my son. A lot of things going on inside of a fighter's mind. I expected him to lose the fight, not get knocked out, but to lose a clear-cut fight. And this was the best performance of his career, including the Loma performance.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I questioned whether he carried his power to 140 pounds.
Yeah.
The way he fought, he didn't need his power. He fought as a slick boxer, used angles, he used his jab, he threw combinations. And I think at the lower weights, when he got those quick knockouts, he probably fell in love with his power and thought he had more power than he actually did. But it looked like he got back to the basics and fought as an intelligent boxer. And Taylor had no answer for him.
None.
But what I question is, why did he have to win the 12th round on the cards to win the fight?
That was one of these cards.
I don't know what those judges were.
Yeah, the judges have been a mess of late.
Yeah, two of the cards. If Taylor won the 12th round on two of those cards, it would have been a draw.
Man, and that would have been another. I mean, how many black eye boxing has like a whole?
That would have been a robbery.
Robbery. This would have been a legitimate robbery because this fight wasn't even close. You know what I mean? So for them to try to push it in his hometown on Puerto Rican Day, parade day, Come on, man. How you gonna do that to him? That fight was made specifically because of that time. At that time, the home guy being of Puerto Rican descent, fighting in
No, he's
New
not
York.
Puerto Rican.
He's not Puerto Rican?
No.
Uh-oh.
No, he's not Puerto Rican. I think he's Honduran.
Oh, Honduran? You know what? I think I did see a Honduran flag. Matter of fact, no, I saw the Scottish flag. But either way, he fought.
Maybe that's why they try to screw him. He ain't Puerto Rican.
Hey, look at this. The Puerto Rican fans are jumping on Shakur Stevenson now because he's now Puerto Rican. I mean, we didn't know that before until he mentioned
He's
it.
Puerto Rican?
Yeah. You got a lot of
I didn't know that.
His father's Puerto Rican.
He's not claiming it. Oh.
Once they mentioned he was Puerto Rican, move over, Tito. This is our guy right here. You know what I'm saying? Tito, we used to like you, but they got a new guy on their hands right now. But nevertheless, Tio put up a performance, and what you mentioned about fighters falling in love with their power, a guy like him who has so much skill, they do fall in love with their power when they become pros because they're knocking guys out early and whenever they want to. In a lot of cases, they forget about all of the skills they've gotten during the amateur days. He had an elaborate amateur career where he was an Olympian, so we know that he has the skills. But when you become a pro and they set you up right to knock these guys out, you fall in love with your power. Kind of like Tank. Tank knocks guys out, but Tank's had over 220 amateur fights. So you know he has a skill set. He just goes after you with the power. And up until the
last,
last,
boxed for several rounds until he landed.
And it shouldn't even get to that point. He has enough skill to set you up for the knockout, not weigh you down for the knockout. You know what I mean? Guys just run out of gas and he catches up to you and he knocks you out. Or, he does a few things, but he has the ability to go from beginning to end and setting you up with that big power shot and knocking you out because of it. But guys are like that. Tommy Hearns. This guy only had 13 KOs in his amateur career of over 140 amateur fights, but he gets to the pros, learns how to punch, doesn't have to rush it because the rounds are longer, and boom, we see what the Hitman became. You know what I mean? But there's been guys like that who, they come into the game like that, and, they just forget, they just don't use their skills. That's why I like Andy Ruiz, because most heavyweights don't have as many amateur fights as he has. You know what I'm saying? And this guy's had over 100 amateur fights, so his skill set is refined. So he gets out there and he has fast hands. I can't believe a guy that size has fast hands. You shouldn't be too surprised because he still has fast hands. You shouldn't be too surprised, but look at his amateur background. He has real skill. These other guys rely too much on power. He can outbox you.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. After Andy won the title by knocking out Joshua, he didn't put in any work to try and retain it. Came in out of shape, thought he was just gonna land a couple punches and keep his title, and he got totally outboxed. He didn't even give himself a chance. But you're right. You can't always judge a book by its cover. Even though he looks the way he does, he has good skills. He has fast hands, and if you sleep on him, he's gonna give you problems.
Oh, absolutely. And he's giving guys problems. I just hope, they said he had a lot of out of the ring issues, and I hope that's the reason why he has been fighting well, kind of like Tio. Tio seems like he has gotten it behind him a little bit with the divorce and now taking care of this kid thing. And he fought like he finally got a load off of his shoulders. Maybe Andy Ruiz is kind of in that same boat because I understood there was some story between his wife saying things about him that could be true, maybe not true. It has to be proven to be true. And maybe with that off of him, he can get back in. And we get to see some nice, at least some good boxing again. Because the guy is nice to watch when he's boxing. His skill set. I mean, he's a high-end boxer skill-wise. It's the discipline is the problem. I don't got to look at his body. I just got to look at his work, and that's what he does. What I mean, when he's on top of his game. So another fight that happened this past weekend was Jaime Munguia versus Sergey Derevyanchenko, and that's possibly a fight of the year candidate because they went back and forth and. Derevyanchenko's been in boxing for a while. He's always getting the short end of the stick. He should have won the fight against Triple G. Now he moves up in weight. He should have possibly. You said you picked him to win this fight. I mean, you have him winning this fight, even though there was a knockdown in the 12th round that obviously was the deciding factor in giving him the victory.
I think Munguia lost at least 7 rounds.
Wow, that's a lot of rounds. Knockdown should handle that.
Yeah, going into the 12th, I thought he needed a knockout. I will say he scored the knockdown in the 11th with the body shot. I'm sorry, the 12th.
Yeah.
And he won the 11th. So he did close the show like a champ, but I just think he was too far behind on the cards. And it wasn't because Derevchenko was better than him. Munguia came in out of shape. He wasn't prepared to go 12 rounds at a top level. And it showed. He was sloppy. He was getting hit with a lot of punches. He wasn't putting in the work that, a world champion type fighter should put in to win the fight. And they also mentioned during the fight that they offered money to Derevchenko's camp to reduce the fight from 12 rounds to 10 rounds. And they said no. So that told you right there, he wasn't in shape to go 12 rounds. But to his credit, he did go the 12 rounds.
Hard round.
He did win the 11th and 12th with the knockdown. So was it a robbery? I wouldn't go that far, but I did think Derevchenko won.
Yeah, it was a close fight. There's never really, in my opinion, a robbery if the fight is close enough. Kind of like the Devin Haney and Loma fight. It was close enough. I still think Loma should have won the fight, but it wasn't a robbery that people call it. Call it a bad decision, not a robbery. I mean, even though it's kind of like both the same, I still think, it could have gone to Loma, but it went to, I would have been mad either way. It went to Haney. I'm good with that. If it would have gone to Loma, I'd have been even better with it because I believe he did enough to win the fight. And going back to Munguia, he showed a lot of heart. You like to see that in young fighters because you never know until you know. And he was in a fight that he was supposed to have a walkover. And as you said, he wasn't in shape. And they were trying to lower the rounds because they kind of knew their guy probably couldn't do it. And guess what? He pushed through it in a hard fight, hard rounds. And, he had to really suck it up and do it. But do you really believe he's ready for the big dogs out there? Because he showed so many defensive deficiencies, a lot of toughness, but you don't want to always have to show how good your chin is in these fights.
Yeah, he did show a tremendous chin. I'd say it's tough to gauge off of this fight because he was tired in the fourth round, in the fifth round. Like I mentioned, he was sloppy. So, when you're tired, you're not going to be at your best. You're not going to show your best skills. Yeah. He was doing whatever he could to counter and land hard shots because he was getting hit with hard shots. But he just couldn't discourage Derevchenko.
Hopefully this is a wake-up call for him to realize that, I probably did slack in his training camp. I thought I was going to have a walkover and you let your little hype get to you. Maybe this is the wake-up call to, in future fights, he doesn't take it for granted. He comes out being the professional he should be. His corner shouldn't have to save his butt before the fight even starts by trying to offer fewer rounds because you can't handle it. So that was a pretty good fight that had to be talked about. And that leads us to another fight. Well, Mayweather fighting John Gotti III. It's a corny fight. This is not a fight people want to watch. But guess what? This fight had a lot of people there because of the name Gotti. Not always necessarily because of Mayweather. John Gotti, especially for those New Yorkers who came down supporting Gotti, we know what it's all about. The tri-state area of New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. John Gotti is a huge name up there. I don't know how much all over the rest of the country they know about him, but they don't know him like the people in the tri-state area. And they were supporting this guy. And I watched the fight, and one thing, after the fact, I wasn't one of the people who paid for it. Mayweather.
I was going to say.
No way. I watched it today. Forget about it. I wasn't watching it. I wasn't paying. Mayweather went after this guy. This is the first time I believe in one of his exhibitions. He actually went after guys and didn't just pot shot. He wouldn't try to put this guy out of there. Gotti was over 180 pounds at fight time. And he didn't. Well, there's levels to this. We already know that. We say it ad nauseum that there's levels to this game. But when a 46-year-old can go against a guy, even though he's just 2-0, remember Conor McGregor was 0-0 when he went 10 rounds with Mayweather and got KO'd. This guy, he showed how the levels are. He showed that, man, I shouldn't even be in here. Lucky for my name, I'm about to get a big check. But then the melee ensued after the fight because Kenny Bayless, as I saw the fight, because initially I thought Kenny Bayless was doing Kenny Bayless things when Mayweather's involved. But when I watched the fight, he warned them about the talking. And it wasn't just regular talking. These dudes is really getting after it. In the clinch, they would let each other go. They're cursing each other out during the fight. You know what I mean? When they're getting broke, they break them. Mayweather was cursing out Gotti.
Yeah, but it's an exhibition. What's he warning them for? Unless they're hitting low, they're using elbows. It's an exhibition. Let them talk. What are you stopping it for?
Yes, the spirit of an exhibition is supposed to be less intense than a regular fight. In a regular fight, you know what? Guys are emotional. Let them talk. You probably could warn them just to save face. But in the exhibition,
But if they're not mic'd up and the crowd can't hear them and the people at home can't hear them, who's it harming? What's the big deal?
I guess Penny Bayless didn't want his virgin ears to hear it. That's exactly what it came down to.
Okay.
Because ultimately, when they stopped it, like when you stop, because Mayweather didn't want it stopped. He was like, "Yo, what?" He puts his hands up, and Gotti's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yo, I told you I was going to stop the fight." He did go to both corners and told them to stop the screaming and talking, and that's what happened. And he stopped it. I still think he shouldn't have, but he stopped it. And that's when the melee ensued, and the Gotti people got into the ring. The Mayweather bodyguards got into the ring, not before Gotti went after Mayweather, going around Kenny Bayless to get some 10 pounds of flesh that he didn't get because Mayweather still coming in. And typical circus for the circus that we know this to be anyway. A Mayweather freaking exhibition. So that's something I thought I could touch on. I wasn't going to.
But here's a question: think it might have been staged? Because if that didn't happen, are we talking about it?
We wouldn't be talking about it. But the tickets were already sold and the pay-per-views were already done. Unless they come with a rematch, I think it defeats its purpose because we didn't go there expecting a melee. We just went there expecting another Mayweather, a Logan Paul kind of thing, just another name guy that people heard of fighting Mayweather. I mean, so once the tickets were sold and the pay-per-views were bought, I mean, whatever happened in between that, that was outlandish, wasn't something people bargained for, I didn't believe, because I didn't think that something like that would happen. I mean, I thought it was just another corny Mayweather event for a retired guy, which I'm not against it. And it was, but it got the buzz it has because people are talking about it now. I saw a multitude of YouTube channels that are talking about that fight. Paulie Malignaggi didn't even mention the fight, and I'm glad
I think we spent too much time on that already.
Yeah, so in that case, then let's move this on to some MMA because we haven't talked.
Amanda Nunes,
exactly. This is the true GOAT, at least of MMA. This woman has done what needed to be done to get that title of GOAT because she also had the competition to make that happen. It wasn't intermittent. It was a competition that she had. She has a litany of women that she beat that were highly regarded and were accomplished when she beat them. I mean, Holly Holm being one of them, Ronda Rousey being another one, Cyborg being another one, and now was Irina Adala that she just beat just now.
Right.
Come on. I mean,
her loss against Pena. Who else is out there?
No one.
Is there someone that fans are clamoring for her to fight? So, yeah, it's a good time for her to retire and go out on top. So, Good luck to her. Congratulations to her on a tremendous career.
Yep.
And let's see who comes and takes her place.
Yeah, so there is no GOAT right now. Someone's going to have to come out from the ashes to prove that they are. I mean, look, in boxing, Clarissa Shields calls herself that. I think the number one female fighter of all time, regardless of sport, is still Lucia Riker. If you watched her growing up or you watched her when she was active, she was undefeated everywhere.
She was getting beat up by Hilary Swank.
yeah, the movies, man. Yeah, they had to put some fiction in there in order to make it believable. But when she was active, man, she was God. The only thing that kind of spoils
she was rough, real rough.
She fought a guy, I believe in Thailand. He was a kind of a nobody. He just ragged her. But that was one of those men versus women things that we shouldn't have anyway because there's just no comparison. No matter what you say, there isn't a comparison between men and women. Come on, we'll have a conversation about that sometime in the future, especially if we go live. We're going to have to talk about that because men and women should not compete against one another, anything outside of chess.
Definitely not.
Seriously. So, yeah, so we can move on to that because now that we talk about the NFL about to start up next month, we're in June. July is when the NFL is coming live in full effect along with college football, but there's some moves being made. Jameis Williams from the Detroit Lions, wide receiver from Alabama, big time player, blew out his knee. We know all about that. He's suspended for the first 6 games of the NFL season because of their gambling nonsense. He was gambling on the premise and not at his home. That's the difference. But Megatron, Lions legend, is going to be his mentor. Calvin Johnson making amends with the Lions organization, and he looks as though he's going to mentor Jameson Williams, and I think it could do nothing but good for the team.
Right. Calvin Johnson, he's done some good things in his life off the football field.
Yep.
And let's see if, Jameson Williams is willing to listen and be mentored because that's the case. you can't help anyone that doesn't want to be helped.
Yep.
But it shows a lot for Kelvin Johnson, wanting to take him under his wing and, maybe teach him a few things and show him how to do things correctly.
Yep.
And we'll see if it works out for him.
Yeah, teach him how to be a pro, because Calvin Johnson was the consummate pro when he was playing. Never complained. They always got him the ball because he was their only option, but he never complained. You never heard about negative things in the press about him. Even in college, you didn't. I still don't believe he went to Georgia Tech. Still blows my mind. You go to an option team as a freaking best wide receiver in the country.
All-American.
Absolutely insane. You go to somewhere like Georgia Tech and still become an All-American. But anyway, the final story of the day to close this NFL lid and the show's lid, Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants may decide to sit out for the entire season because he doesn't want to sign his franchise tender. He wants a more guaranteed long-term contract, or at least something that has terms to it, not just one term.
Yeah, I can't really say I blame him. Everyone wants security. And for the most part, last, 12 years or so, the running back role in the NFL has diminished. Yeah. However, Saquon Barkley, he's a difference maker. Yeah. He doesn't just run the ball. He had almost 60 catches last year, and he makes big plays. He's a difference maker. So if any running back's gonna get paid, Saquon should be one of them.
And the problem with him is the injuries. That's the problem right there. He got that knee injury, and then he got injured again. But when he's healthy, or when he's half healthy, he's still better than the average running back. I mean, he's just a phenomenal player. And as you mentioned, catching out of the backfield, he's a formidable player even when he's half healthy. And you know what? I think the thing that really helps with his case, especially with fans, is he's like, look, I'm not looking to break the bank. I know my role, and I know the running back's role in the NFL now. It's not what it once was when Emmitt Smith could, sit out and get the biggest contract possible. He knows that running backs aren't as valued as much, even though he brings more value because he catches out of the backfield. He's a willing blocker, and he still has the vision that can run with the power that he always run with. And he's like, I don't want to break the bank. I just want what I believe is fair for me and fair for the organization. Not too many players speaking like that these days and meaning it.
Right. Yeah. That shows a lot on his part, saying he doesn't want to set the market for running backs. He just wants to be paid fairly.
Yep.
And we'll see if the Giants will do that.
And as a side
note, sitting out, holding out usually doesn't bode well for the player holding out. So hopefully for his benefit, he works out a deal before the season starts.
And how much money do they have left when they just gave Daniel Jones all of that money that I don't believe he deserves? But you know what? He's the quarterback. He knows the plays. You don't want to start all over again with someone else, so you kind of run with that. Saquon knows his role. And side note, he's a cousin of Aaron Barkley, the boxer. How about that?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Blade. Both from the Bronx. And before he moved out to Pennsylvania, he was living in the Bronx. And the Blade, as you know, from the Bronx. I've watched Aaron for a long time, even in his Golden Glove days. But anyway, that'll be it for us on the 8th episode of the Sports Bros Podcast. Sports Bag Bros Podcast. What is up with this? I get all this.
Two-zip heat. Steal and dunk to start the game. We'll see. Are we wrong?
It's all about the start now. But tomorrow, when we talk about this sports that we talk about, the conversation we bring to you, the NBA may be over. Most likely would be over. But we'll find out tomorrow. I'm Trav. He's biased. We're signing off. See you tomorrow.
Tomorrow night.